Hello and a very warm welcome to everyone for our this afternoon session for our Automotive Congress. Let me just make a couple of remarks and introductional and organizational remarks before we start the actual Congress this afternoon. So just for let you to know, there's no chat function today. Everybody's microphone is, of course, automatically disabled. And please use the Q&A function to direct the questions to the panel, to all of us. If you're joining us via Facebook live stream, please use the comment function too. We will do our best to include as many questions as possible in today's event. And we want to be as interactive as possible to hear from you, your knowledgeable advice and comments. If you'd like to listen in another language than English, please first change the language to either German or French. And if you like, deactivate the original language. Otherwise, you might hear both languages at the same time. So first, I would like to take the opportunity and say our sincere thanks to all of you joining us today for this important event, the transition of the automotive industry. We have people joining today from all over Europe, from Belgium, France, Germany, Austria, Italy, and even from the US. And I would like to extend my special thanks to all our speakers who kindly donate their time to be here with us today, and to those experts who advised us prior to this event, as well as especially, of course, to my colleagues, Deparnay-Grunenberg and Henrike Hahn. We are excited to have such a large range of expert perspective in this virtual room today. The three of us come from the three main states in Germany to develop where cars developed and produced. From our perspective now, we need a proper European strategy to drive the unavoidable transition of the automotive industry. We need to make a decision and not to continue to waste time discussing which road or which path we need to take the lead as Greens in giving the European Green Deal meaning. The decision has been made while we continue to discuss which engines we want to use. Other global players have long changed already to electromobility, and to follow the example of people like, for example, the US President Joe Biden, when he announced he aims to change his entire procurement to reflect the Paris Agreement. We should start to aim to bring disruptive developments to Europe and truly change the automotive industry before it will experience a forced restructure and even a shutdown. Some companies adapt more effectively when faced with challenges and change than others. Let's aim to be one of the engines to drive the change and not only to participate. And to get the motivation of for this event, we need to stop thinking at a national level and start thinking as Europeans to take a targeted approach. From a Greens perspective, we want to be understood as a strong partner to exchange thoughts, have expert discussion, and drive the new way forward together. We want to open and continue this conversation with players in the field, including the suppliers and all of the affected organizations, and of course, including the automotive companies as well. Again, let's not wait for the global market to force their changes on us. Let's not wait for them to change the current market shares dramatically. Let's not wait for China to take over our market. Let us act as one united Europe and lead by example, so our voters will choose to follow suit. And as Greens, it is important that we feel responsible for this sector, which we are, and not to focus ourselves on a small part of this sector, but the entire big picture of this transition of the automotive industry. So thank you a lot for joining. I will look forward to this event with all of you. And now for the first panel with Dr. Mario Herger from California, I will hand over to my colleague, Anna Deparnay-Grunenberg. Anna, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Viola, and thank you very much, Henrike, and also all the panelists here joining us today for this, I hope, really comprehensive and maybe, funny talk about the future of the automotive. We are now, everybody stick at home in this period of pandemic, but we have to think about the mobility of the future. That's for sure. We have climate change, we have new trends, and it's really important now that we have this kind of blue post to think about what the future is going to bring and how we can, of course, participate. Because I think that's most of the main message for me from this pandemic. It's shown us, of course, that everything is interlinked. And so we are creating our future by acting and by deciding and by having an exchange of information. And so I'm very, very pleased to have here today Dr. Mario Herger with us. He's a technology trend researcher and author. He wrote a book with a pregnant title, The Last Driver's License Holder Has Already Been Born. So to be an introduction to this thematic today. It's a really interesting title. And I know you're writing on a new book that's also interesting. Maybe you want to come in with that. Your main point of residence is outside Europe. You live and work as a researcher and expert in the automotive industry in the Silicon Valley in sunny California. And if we drew a roadmap of the global development now in this sector, we would state, I suppose, the market is now led by China and innovations coming out of the US. Do you agree with that? And how do you see Europe's role in this global race? What does Europe have to now to do to take the lead in the automotive development? Oh, maybe what is a special role from Europe in this point of view?
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for the invitation, and also everyone for joining us. Yes, that's correct. I live in the Silicon Valley. This is the region between San Francisco and San Jose, about 80 kilometers distant, 3.5 million people living here. About 60,000 Germans living here, so it's not that insignificant. And as you can see in my head here, it's the wild, wild west still, the gold rush country, so to speak, and the pioneer country. And I think that is an important component of why today a lot of these innovations that we have to react in the European Union and basically reactant to those changes are coming out of that space. And then in addition, China, which we could consider also as a pioneer culture that came basically after a long drought period of poverty into a technological level that is just astonishing of how fast and quickly they were able to do that. So let's maybe start first with what are the changes that we see in the automotive industry. There are 4 main areas that we see, and these are electric mobility, these are autonomous driving, then shared driving, Uber and Lyft, for example, and then connectivity. The most important ones are definitely electric driving and autonomous driving. I live just 10 minutes south of the Tesla factory. We have 2 Teslas at home. And autonomous cars here, you mentioned sunny California. It's actually rain season here at the moment. We have about 8 to 9 months sun where the grass and everything is brown normally. And in winter, right now, everything is green. But these are also good conditions for testing, for example, autonomous vehicles because of the just weather conditions that most of the time it's sunny. So it's easier to develop those rain influences, LiDAR systems and radar systems. But also we are close here in this region of the world to snow. Tahoe, where Bonanza, the TV show, was recorded, is just 4 hours north of here. We have deserts at Death Valley, Nevada, just right around the corner. So you can test your cars pretty well with those new kind of things. Now, the status is we have about today here, we call it Tesla land. Yeah? Every 10th car basically that is passing by on the street is a Tesla today. Every fifth car is an electric vehicle. And I'm not talking about a plug-in hybrid. I talk about really a battery electric vehicle that we see here. We have about 800 autonomous experimental vehicles driving in the Bay Area by now about 6 companies, of which 6 companies have even the permit from California DMV, the Department of Motor Vehicle, to drive without a driver on board. That means the car can drive empty around here. And this legislative framework allows to test out this stuff pretty quickly. That does not mean they have lax regulations. It just means they are open to support those kind of things and help out and learn from that and react to that. Now, what does it make that the Silicon Valley and then China are so innovative? And this has a lot to do with the mindset. It's not about that they are smarter, not at all. When you go into these automotive companies like Tesla, you actually have a lot of Europeans working there. Yeah, so 5 people at these Lucid companies, out of those 5 people that report, there were 3 Europeans in there. You walk into Tesla and you have German everywhere. So it has nothing to do with that. These people come from the same universities, have the same education, the same culture as we in Europe, but there's something else. They're allowed to take chances, take risks. And because the system here allows you, that the total ecosystem allows you to encourages you with that, including the official agencies, government, and so on, we have more speed here. And that has probably to do with the pioneer culture. I think one of the problems that we in Europe have is we were too successful. Yeah, the wealth that we are benefiting from today that was created by companies, especially in the automotive industry, 130 years ago. The wave of companies that were founded in Germany, for example, around 1870, starting this entire wave, a majority of these companies is still in the stock indexes in Europe. For example, in the German stock index, out of 30 companies that are listed there, 24 are older than 100 years. But the problem is we don't have those new companies coming up. We are not having these startups, these young unicorns, these billion-dollar companies coming out in those amounts that we would like to see. They're all coming from the US, they're all coming from China, and they're dominating. That makes us to a kind of a defender of the status quo, because we achieved and accomplished so much in the last 130 years. Basically, Europe was the Silicon Valley of the world about 130 years ago. Today, we are trailing that. We're not acting, we're reacting. They are inventing here, the Chinese are copying, the Europeans are regulating innovation. That's the situation that we see today. Maybe one more thing, because of that history, we are here kind of in an unfair competition, because the people that are today leading our companies, the top companies, the automotive companies, are managers, while the companies that here are coming in with disruption are led by the founders or the owners, like a Tesla. And these are 2 very different types of people: entrepreneurs on the one side, managers on the other side. They're completely differently evaluated. Yeah? A founder typically has a long-term vision, is more trusted by the investors because they have this idea, they can do crazy ideas. The investors, the venture capital investors, take a bet on them. While here we have managers, board members. They're not less smart, not at all. They're very, very smart, and they can run these big companies, but they are evaluated, their KPIs, their metrics are very different. They have to guarantee that the shareholder value, the share price is going up. And if this is not going up in their 4 years of tenure, they're being booted from the companies. So an incentive system that also gives them a bonus by tying that to the share price, of course, makes them take measures that give them short-term success. And that is normally not good for long-term strategy. Take Waymo, Google, the company that does autonomous driving. They started in 2009. They spent about $15 billion so far. They have not yet a business model for that or a product out there. In the same period, Volkswagen alone had 3 CEOs. Each CEO had his bonus tied to the share price. Spending $1 billion or $2 billion every year on that just presses down my bonus. So these are some of these factors that are contributing to why we are trailing.
Yeah, that's really funny because on the one side, we would expect that those old companies with this tradition have a long-term view. But as you just mentioned, because we have this other structure and not an owner with a special goal or a special vision, we are in fact more administrating it than putting forward. Just have another question for you. Do you have an idea? Can you imagine for a moment what you think the automotive market is going to look like in 2030 maybe? And maybe which type of company do you expect to be in the lead? And maybe which type of cars do you see in future, and why?
Yeah, so I mean, my book title kind of reveals what I'm thinking about. So I think what we will see in 2030, 2035 in that period is that the majority of miles driven on public roads, also in the European Union, will be done by autonomous electric vehicles in a sharing system. That means kind of a electric robot taxi. Now, what about the companies? So when we look at what Clayton Christensen, a Harvard professor who wrote the book, The Innovator's Dilemma, and coined the term disruptive innovation, wrote about and researched in his entire life, he figured out that when you looked at disruption points, that means industries that got disrupted, and he started that with his PhD work on the storage industry, digital storage, computer storage industry. He figured out that when you looked at the top 10 companies before a disruption happened and looked at the top 10 companies after the disruption, and for every generation, 50 to 90% of the companies that were in the top 10 before the disruption were gone in the top 10 after the disruption. That means we had a high fatality rate for companies. And fatalities meant these companies either moved out of this industry, these companies went bankrupt, or these companies merged or were acquired. Yeah, so these companies disappeared in this kind. Just think about cell phones. When you think about 2007, what cell phones you had, you would probably remember brands like Nokia, BlackBerry, Samsung, Sony, Siemens, Motorola. Yeah, and when you look at that, what are the companies that are today leading in that space, have a significant market share? Then there's only Samsung left, plus from these old ones, plus a bunch of new companies. So that means if we can use those predictions by Clayton Christensen, we would see at least half of the automotive companies that we know today in Europe disappearing. That means in Germany, for example, from the 3 big ones, Volkswagen, Daimler, and BMW, that probably 2 of them are disappearing. And we see these things going on. I mean, the PSA Group and Fiat Chrysler, today we are talking about them too, kind of had to merge. This is a reaction to that. This is not coming out of strength. So we will see a lot of new players. I'll just give you one more fact, and then we can go to the panel. The fact is that the 5 most valuable car companies today, 3 companies are pure electric car companies. 2 of them are from China. 1 is from the US, and then you have Toyota and Volkswagen among them. That already gives you an idea of what's going on in that space, that there is really something going on, that in 2030, half of the companies that we call today our car companies will be gone. Okay.
Okay, I hand you over now to the colleague Henrike Hahn. While exactly this capitalization, it's the stock market value it's really amazing. We have heard in the first panel this morning, or in the first part of our Congress this morning, that Tesla has a capitalization, I think, of 650 billion, but I've read already it's 700. So what you have mentioned,
over $800 billion.
Yes, $1 billion. So we speak about a huge amount of money, and you have just mentioned, let's say, the old or the incumbent automotive industry, and I think there were mentioned like 6 conventional automotive companies together have the same share or the same capitalization as Tesla. So there is a big change, and there are developments. And I would like to hand over to Henrike now for the first panel, while we can welcome James Copping, who is an advisor for the DG Grow and head of the unit Automotive and Mobility Industry, as well as Philippe Van Geel, and he is the General Secretary of AVER. And AVER is the European Association for Electromobility, and everything else can be explained by yourself and by the panelists. Henrike, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, dear Viola, and thank you very much, dear Anna and Dr. Mario Heger, for your insight in the American or global perspective here. So let's keep the impulses for our panel discussion with James Copping and Mr. Van Geel. And just to repeat it this afternoon, we will discuss how developments like evolving global markets, e-mobility and digitalization have impact on regional economies in Europe. So we discussed that a little earlier before in the German context, but now we widen our scope. And just to tell a little bit about our speakers again, James Copping works as policy officer in the Automotive and Mobility Unit of the European Commission. We all know that the European Commission is very engaged as well in the automotive sector. At least it is part of the industrial strategy. It is mentioned, not very much, but it is in there. So Mr. James Copping develops policy related to the European Commission strategy for the European car industry, and he focuses on developing policies and strategies related to electrification and the development of battery manufacturing in the EU. And we're very happy to have a representative of the Commission in our panel today for the European perspective. And then we also welcome Philippe Van Geel, as Viola just said, Secretary General at AVER, and AVER is the European Association for Electromobility, promotes e-mobility, so this will be discussed with a great expertise this afternoon, and sustainable transport across Europe. When you worked before, I've seen as an entrepreneur in e-retail, security and the medical sector, so thank you very much for being with us today. We're very interested in your insights. So we have a multinational panel to discuss the impacts on European regions. And just if you start, dear James Copping, with a couple of insights, we're grateful for that. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much for that introduction. And I just want to spend a few minutes just giving some broad thoughts on this area. And perhaps we can then would provide the basis for some questions to follow. I mean, I think the important thing is to, as you scaled in the introduction, I come at this from an industrial policy perspective. Of course, I have plenty of colleagues in other parts of the Commission looking at the issue of mobility and alternative fuels from other perspectives. But from our perspective, we start from the rather, I think, obvious point, but important point, that the automotive sector in Europe is absolutely strategic for the whole EU economy. It employs in the region nearly 15 million people, if you include all the services sectors as well as the manufacturing. It did have, certainly before the COVID, 20% of global production. generates a huge trade surplus for the EU, which was 73 billion last year, and invests 60 billion in R&D. So this is an enormous sector of huge importance. And what it also means is that nearly every member state in the European Union, with the possible exception of Malta and Cyprus, will have some significant automotive manufacturing, whether it's in the supply chain or making the main cars, and at least 12 member states have this as a very significant part of their economies. So it means that in a lot of regions, the automotive sector is the driving force and of the local economy, and in places like Slovakia, you could argue that the automotive sector is the most important part of the economy. So whatever happens to the automotive sector in Europe is of vital importance to a number of regions and to national economies as well. And we need to keep that in mind. I think we have, of course, in the last year, with the impact of COVID, seen a dramatic impact on the automotive sector, and it remains to be seen whether this is long-term or not. But to give you an example, car sales fell by 23% in the EU on average, but in a number of countries it was a lot higher than that. Because one of the consequences of that is that the newer, more efficient and lower emission cars are not being sold as they were with the internal combustion engine technology. But and we've seen significant impact in terms of workers on part-time clothes, and at least 100,000, as we've been able to estimate, have lost their jobs. So this is a huge impact for the local economies. But this is all happening at a time of really major change. And as Dr. Hege said at the beginning, he pointed out, I think, maybe the European automotive sector is perhaps a victim of its success. It's led for such a long time in the technologies related to internal combustion engines, for petrol and diesel, and has dominated the market for these, that perhaps we've been slower in Europe to change, not only because of perhaps the attitude to risk and the structures that were so well explained before, but also that there is perhaps a feeling that we're happy with the technology we had. We're still improving it, and a reluctance to make the huge investments to switch to another technology where others were already leading. However, it's quite clear that there is a momentum for change in Europe in the automotive sector. We have a shift to much more connected and automated driving, and there's a big policy changes on that and huge investment for companies. But also this shift, which I think is now unstoppable, towards much greater lower and zero emission mobility. And we of course see this as a very positive impact, but there's going to be dramatic changes in the industry to have to deal with that. And I want to flag up, because I'm sure I'm running out of time, is just to flag up a couple of areas which I think are important for the regional economies and the regional areas that are where you have car manufacturing. One is to ensure is the infrastructure to support alternative fuels. So you have enough recharging points. If you're going to switch to electric vehicles, you need to make sure that the people have the confidence to use this, and there's a proper network of rechargers. And at the moment, not only do we not have enough rechargers, but we have largely the network is concentrated in 3 countries. And you come at this from the EU perspective, that's not good enough. We need to make sure that there's a fair distribution of a recharging infrastructure for electric vehicles across Europe. The second aspect I think is going to be important is the names of skills, reskilling. We're already working hard on this, and I was at a conference this morning where we're looking at developing regional pilot projects to help regions retrain their existing workforce, not only in the big car manufacturers, but in the supply chains as well, looking at how EU policies can help that, trying to identify the skills of the future. And so the question about what the car industry will look like in 30, 35 years' time is really important to try, however difficult it is to answer, it's really important to try and understand what that means, because the training, the university degree courses you're developing now, you know, they're the ones that are going to produce the engineers in the future. So we're going through this exercise through 2 major European schemes to try and identify that and identify the courses you need. Finally, and I think this is going to become important, but to what extent we'll have to see, is there's also a huge push that the sources of energy to make cars and to refuel them should be decarbonized as much as possible. So, for example, in the area of battery manufacturing, the first big European owned and developed battery manufacturer is up in the north of Sweden, where it can have access to plentiful and relatively cheap hydroelectric power to support it. But if you're going to put all the big, well, the most energy intensive use of the car manufacture process at the moment is probably in the batteries. If you're putting them into those sort of areas, there are going to be implications for the local economies there. If you suddenly take a town from 500 up to 2,000 or 3,000, you need infrastructure, you need schools, you need all sorts of things. I think there are things that need to be worked out about how we distribute power to these new industries. But I just leave it at that for the time being. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for these very useful insights. And let me just add you a perspective as parliamentarian working as well in the budget committee. So how is the Commission ensuring that funds are focused on the development of electric mobility? You were just mentioning some aspects here. Furthermore, how it is, how the Commission ensures that money is not spent for various contradicting tracks, delaying and damaging the entire development somehow. So that's interesting. You look at fuel station development, all the use of hydrogen, who had its chance in the early 2000 years, for example. That would be a very interesting point.
Okay. Yes, well, let me come back on that. I can only give you a partial answer from the parts that I'm involved in. I think there are 3. One is that the Commission has stressed time and time again that in the member states' plans to access the next generation EU funding, we're looking for support for technologies, for green and digital technologies. And we've highlighted in our discussions and papers that you know, the automotive sector, the switch to low emission, zero emission mobility would be a key, would be a very good example of how member states could use that funding. In terms of research, we've had, with the new Horizon Europe program, brought a lot of the battery, for example, on the battery side, the existing projects together into one battery partnership where we can work with industry to develop the batteries of the future, the next generation batteries, and also look at all different parts of the supply chain, including recycling, sustainable access to raw materials, battery materials, and so on. And recently, very recently, you may have seen that we've used the state aid instrument. So this is an EU instrument, but it's national money, to launch the second battery consortium involving 42 members or 46 companies, I can't remember the exact number, over 12 member states, with a whole series of innovative projects across the value chain. So those are the examples that come to mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these insights. I would like to proceed with Philippe Van Geel. If you have some thoughts here about our discussion topics, and of course you're very familiar with the situation in France with your work, I think, but you also have a strong link to Belgium via Brussels and the European perspective. So we are looking forward to your thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation to speaking here. Via Europe, I maybe will shortly explain where our origins are, and it gives a better picture. We are established already in '78, and it seems quite a long time ago. But it's good to reflect on that those years were the first years where the oil crisis happening in the world, where we really were panicking that we were running out of oil. And it's awkward to see that 40 years later, we have acted, but we are still struggling to make that necessary shift. And our founders, there were more academic persons who were really looking to the alternatives. And yeah, for many years, it has been a challenge and also a point of recognition. And yeah, today, I think we can speak that we are actually at the end of the beginning of electromobility. We have had all the old challenges. It's not about talking about, will the transition happen? Will it be electromobility? Will it somebody else? Policy questions from, do we need direct purchase subsidies, yes or no? Also questioning about the performance. These questions are all outdated. The range anxiety is gone. We have proper charging peaks, and we have infrastructure is installed in a quite very good, in a hurdle even almost. What are the new EV challenges? Yeah, it's not about where next, and which steps do we have to take next to make it achievable. And we also see that now, finally, the policy has entered with broader mechanisms and broader instruments. We are very happy with the European Green Deal that have been launched at the beginning of the European Commission, but we're also now very happy with the Sustainable Smart and Mobility Strategy that has been aligned, which gives us already a focus by 2030. And it indicates also the upcoming challenges. Meanwhile, we need to keep focus on why we are doing this. It seems sometimes that people think, yeah, driving electric is fun, it's nice. If you have experienced, we know that most people that own an EV will never return, but keep on focus why we are doing it. It's because of clean air. We need to focus on the health, on the side of the first aspect of this. And it goes, of course, with the facts on the focus on energy efficiency first. So a well-managed transition towards a resilient European mobility sector will be essential to meet the overarching long-term and mid-term EU climate goals. It's key to support the mass uptake of EVs, and it will be we need to develop and provide smart and well-integrated EV charging infrastructure, as already indicated by a previous speaker. And with the help of relevant experts from the entire EV value chain, this high-level event can explore, of course, the role of the utilities and other industries, because it's not anymore building a car. I think the automotive sector have to recognize that it's completely shift. We have to talk to other sectors. It's about energy, it's about renewable energy. So I'm pretty strong to quote actually that the automotive industry is not longer building cars, but actually building battery on wheels, performing as almost as a smartphone, as a data hub. There is so much data that is produced. We see this data exchange already happening also with charging and recharging. The car is talking to the charging point because they need to agree on what level they will charge. So e-mobility is indeed the new mainstream, but we have to recognize this transition towards all the different sectors. And therefore, there is also the necessary transition for jobs. At the end was also the discussion about which technology will win. And yeah, maybe I conclude from there. yeah, keep again on focus. We should be energy neutral by 2050, no greenhouse gas emissions anymore. Whatever technology it will be, as long there, let's be there, there could be complementary, and that point of recognition is primer on this.
Thank you very much, dear Philippe van Geel. That was very interesting. And you were just saying electromobility will be the new mainstream. But of course, this afternoon we work on that, how to establish that, right, and to push that in that direction. And I wonder, as an additional question after your thoughts, what do you think after we heard also Mario Henrike before, what do you think e-mobility in Europe can learn from the United States, from France, from China? Where are we still behind, or where are the challenges we could learn from? And are there any specific regional impacts, or just also a mindset, a special mindset consumers have? I mean, when we talk about Silicon Valley, it's always like a land that is somewhere, really developed in that regard. And are we still behind in Europe in that perspective, or what do you think on that regard?
It's a complex question. So, yeah, big focus, we should indeed aim to the EV, or the end user itself. And we see this from other technology transitions. When the first smartphones came out, a phone without a keyboard was really awkward for many of us. If you look at that today, yeah, this is also became mainstream. And it's also there, we need to get the experience, get the people in an electric vehicle. And once that happens, it comes alone. And that also we have seen in Norway, where in Europe, that's the country where the most EVs are sold. And they ended up last year with above 50% of the sales is pure electric. And there also, it's like a flower effect. One flower comes open and the seeds are spreading around. And the more winter is, the more flowers we get. And this exactly should happen with EV buyers as well. But it's not only about EV buyer, it's also about EV seller. And the ones who are selling the EVs have to recognize the complexity and the transition. It's not anymore that you can drive out the car of the car dealership and think, I'm gone. We talked about the charging. You can charge at home. Today, we know that more than almost reaching 80% of people that owns an EV can charge or will charge at home or at work. So there is also on that side a major shift. And of course, we are aware of that not all people in Europe have the access to home charging, but therefore we should also go hand in hand with the public charging points. And that has to be defined by member state, by region. City agglomerations have a different challenge than you have on countrysides. And finally, it has to go hand in hand with the energy efficiency. So we look indeed on the renewables and how can this put in place. But on the long term, the electricity challenge that we are foreseen in 10 to 20 years is that we also go from a shift to the electricity production. And we hear speaking about renovation wave, go for electrification also in heating in buildings, but how can all this be challenged? Yeah, we keep in mind that also the car is an energy hub. The battery is an energy storage point, and purpose of vehicle to grid, smart charging will be key to future answers of also the energy challenge. And this all has to go hand in hand. But this explains, of course, automatically that we're not talking about, we are producing a car. You produce much more than it is or what it has been.
Thank you very much for your thoughts here. And dear Mario Herge, just to continue that thought a little bit, we are talking about 2030 30 as a date the whole day now, of course, focusing on that date as an important date for the decarbonization of the industry, the economy, to reach our climate goals. And what companies would you expect to be in the lead in 2030? Will it be manufacturers or digital players? Where will they sit? So what would be your vision in that? Maybe also on electromobility, but also in general. Thanks.
Well, I guess, of course, it's a long shot, and I can only guess as much as everyone else can. But I think when I look at German car companies, currently the only one that is really fully committed or seems fully committed is Volkswagen, that came out with a platform, has quite some success with their electric vehicle, the ID.3 and the ID.4 that are coming out, and the Porsche especially. So I would see them, if they can continue with it like that they may be playing still a big role in 2030. I'm not so sure about other companies. There is quite a lot missing. They seem less committed. What I would expect is that we would probably about a third to half of the electric vehicles that we see in Europe may be coming from China. And then, of course, American manufacturers such as Tesla, who is just building their own factory around Berlin. So I would see that if I could make a guess, and of course, don't nail me down on the numbers in 10 years, then you say, Mario, you said that, it's not happening. I would guess that half of the car companies that we see today in Europe are gone. We will have a lot of more Chinese companies in Europe being present, like the Japanese came in the 70s and 80s, and have significant market share. And then maybe new players that we have not seen yet. We see some interesting developments also, like for example, Volvo, that got a Chinese investor, came out with Polestar, a complete new brand and company that they have here, and seem to be rather successful with their car and dominating. So there are chances a lot for companies that have not much to lose in that sense. Yeah, Daimler or BMW, they have a lot to lose, so they are hesitant. But companies that are smaller, that are not seen as the dominant companies, can act, I think, more freely, and this is, I think, what we're seeing.
Thank you very much. And your example shows how important it is that the automotive sector is innovative at the same time, right? And this is why we also in the parliament were so keen that we spend enough money for research and development, right? So Horizon Europe, for example, we weren't happy with our first proposal we received from the Commission concerning the budget, because this is very important for Europe to be on the top. And
can I chip in on the research and development money? Yeah. So because this is an interesting topic. It's not, I think, that the European car companies are suffering from not investing enough into innovation. They actually do. When you look at the statistics, then companies such as Volkswagen have like $15 billion a year that they spend in R&D. But towards the question on what is this spend? Is this spend on developing a diesel engine? Yeah. So are these the right technologies that they're developing? Or are they working on digital technologies such as autonomous driving and all these kind of things that they're talking about? What I'm also missing here is, I mentioned that in the Silicon Valley, we have, in the heydays, we had 66 companies with a license to test autonomous vehicles. Now it's 56, so much less. But including, of course, in this 56 are all these big automotive companies. Yeah, so we have about 10 of these companies have a license, but the rest of the companies are startups or digital companies. Now, look at the numbers in Europe. How many autonomous driving companies do you know? Companies that develop self-driving cars beside the big OEMs. I know in Germany one company that's called Copernicus out. I know in France two, EasyMile and Navia. So the country that invented the car has one autonomous car company, while in the US we have 66 or 56 companies with that. So we are not, when we look at an R&D money, we are allocating it wrongly. Yeah, and somehow the European Union tends to hand out R&D money, Horizon 2020, especially to universities. These are not kind of these, this is not venture capital in that sense. Yeah, this is a very different kind of money for innovation. And the results are disappointing, I would say, because the people working then in those self-driving car companies here in the US, Voyage, it's a British guy who founded that. Yeah, there is another British guy who does a Robomart, a delivery car company, and so on. So you could go on and on and on and on like that. And they're doing it all here because here is this investment that they use for R&D and development and creating a product. And this is very different from what we have in Europe. So this is something to think about.
Yeah.
Change.
Thank you very much. Indeed, I also agree with you that I think that the huge companies in the automotive sector, they spend a lot of money for research and innovation. So that's not the point here. But other companies have to have a chance as well to be supported, and EU tax money has to be spent for innovative solutions here in general. And it reminds me again to what we just discussed with Philippe Fangel, that there's a cultural phenomenon as well, right? I mean, cars without drivers, if they run around, people who live, with that pilot project, for example, have to agree on that, when your kids cross the street, for example. It's a cultural component. You might have a different one in Silicon Valley, but definitely the point is how Europeans can learn from the American perspective as well, how we can build the car of the future, right, in a way that we meet the Paris climate goals, for that the companies remain resilient and competitive and all that. So that's a huge question. And just to give back, to come back to the audience, because we received lots of questions, very interesting questions. I have a question for James Copping. You were just mentioning batteries and chargers, and we received a question like the following. You rightly stated that EV chargers are predominantly located in 3 countries. And what does the EU have in mind to ensure that charging infrastructure is built in new places? What if member states are not ambitious enough in their national RRF plans? I think that's a very interesting question. If you have an answer to that, I'm grateful.
Let me just come to the last part of that question first. So we're reaching the critical stage now with the RRF plans. The Commission has set out detailed guidance for member states on the priority areas for projects and financing. Those plans are coming in and being assessed, and we're reporting back to member states on their plans. I think it's in everyone's interest that these plans are ambitious and put Europe's economy back on the road, not just for an immediate recovery, but for the long-term competitiveness of the economy and to meet our climate goals. So let's see, but that process is ongoing, and it's one that we're taking very, very seriously. In terms of rechargers, this is our colleagues in the transport part of the Commission are looking at this. You might have seen, and I'd recommend people reading it if they haven't, just before Christmas, the Commission produced its Sustainable and Smart Mobility Strategy, which covered a number of areas, particularly including connected and automated driving, but low emission and zero emission mobility, and lots of areas. But one of the areas is on alternative fuels and into alternative fuels infrastructure directive, which already exists and provides targets for placing recharging points. That is in the process of being revised, and we aim to reduce another proposal to strengthen this directive during the course of this year. I think the target date is the summer, but I can't confirm that. But we have in that strategy, you see the target to aim for 3 million recharging points by 2030 and at least 1 million by 2025. And the directive will provide the legislative base behind that. I believe there are other measures to support that objective, but I'm afraid I don't know the details, but it's a key area for us. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much as well. And I see that we still have a minute for a last question to Philippe Vangel, please, a last one. So from also we received in the chat, as discussed before, companies have to bring invested money back in short time. So currently the conventional car manufacturers make their money with combustion engines, cars, and any investments in e-cars don't bring back the money they have to give back to their shareholders in short time. So to fulfill their own performance contracts, the CEOs of, let's say, Daimler, for example, can sell a long-time transition strategy to the board of shareholders. So is that a problem somehow, and how it can be solved? If you have an opinion here, I'm looking forward to it.
Good question, but there is also a mix of factors. The car markets cannot make any more what I want to do. We got now CO2 regulations, and they became more stricter and stricter. So there is also a push or an obligation to invest in these cleaner vehicles, and where we have seen that they took the full freedom to develop different models. There is now the CO2 regulation, which is in order from 2021, where the average production of the total offer of cars that one OEM offers is subject on their fines if they don't reach that that target. And there we have seen at least the acceleration for that. More EV models in the showroom will also bring more sales, and we have to recognize that there is actually a very high demand for electric vehicles. We have seen production quota bringing in place or launches of new EVs, and they were sold out in a fraction. I remember that some models will be launched in Norway, and the total production quota that was previewed for Europe was sold out in 1 week in Norway only. So the demand is extremely high, but the production quota is not there yet. And I actually want to add also a bit on the infrastructure side. We look very often also to the European Commission from what should we do on infrastructure and how many charging points there should be. I've seen now, for example, from the Netherlands, they have really had a clean view for their own country, what it should be by 2030 on charging points if we go as we want to go for full electromobility, zero emission transport. And they came now with a national plan out for charging infrastructure, and they want to build 1.9 million charging points only in the Netherlands. So they have a clear vision and a clear plan. And we just have to invite all the other member states to do the same. It is possible, the technology is there, the knowledge is there, just implement it and act. And stop ignoring from, no, it's not possible, it's too difficult, it's too expensive, or what else. It's about a future, it's about sustainability, it's about clean air, it's about health. Just act, do it.
Wonderful, thank you so much. We couldn't find any better last words than that for this panel round. I think let's do it, and let's put all these things in the core of our initiatives in the future to change or to transform the automotive sector in a positive way and to create new solutions. So what we have now is a little break for 5 minutes, and then we continue with Marc Chevreau. We are looking forward to it. No, I'm just, that's what I have in my hands. But,
yes, but I
yes.
guess, sorry that I interrupted you. I don't want to be impolite, but I would propose that there was like a buffer, and I would say, if nobody objects, that we would maybe, if you don't mind, there's a very interesting question for James Copping from the EU. I just came in the chat here, and if you don't mind, because I'm curious too, that is about Sweden, and if you don't mind, I read it out loudly. And before we say goodbye to the first panel, it says Sweden is installing 3,000 of inductive or inducive charging lanes for battery electric trucks until 2035. Can this technology be installed and used for electric cars as well all over Europe? While we had a debate recently in Germany, I would be interested in this answer before we hand over to the next panelist.
Right, I'm sorry, I'm going to disappoint you on this, because I really, I would need my colleagues here from the transport DG to answer that. I just don't know on answer on that. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I can't be as uplifting as our previous speaker on that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So we would just take that question with us in our head, and we will find answers to that, I'm sure. Yeah. And yeah, so I think now we have time to make a break or to continue. Anna, how would you like to continue? I mean, we have like 3 minutes.
I mean, it's okay to continue now.
I think, we can continue.
Yeah.
And thank you very much, dear Philippe, dear Mario, and dear James. It was a real pleasure, and we profited a lot from your ideas and thoughts. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think we are in a crucial moment now to think about the future, and I really appreciate the thought from Mario Herger about this other mindset. But in my point of view, it's really important as well to keep maybe this European way to think a little bit different that the American ones, and really different from the Chinese. And maybe it's a kind of a strength. Like I see, I'm a forester, so I'm looking to the ecosystems, and when different plants, different fungi are acting differently, at the end, it's make the whole system more resilient. So maybe that's an idea that the way now other continents are dealing with the transition is really interesting for us, and we have to have a look, of course. But we see also in Europe, maybe like the old saying from Goethe, but where the danger is, the saving powers will grow as well. And maybe they're growing in another way in other continents. And we see in Europe maybe different evolution. We saw, for instance, in the town of Aachen, a university project making really low-tech electric vehicles, the kind of the collateral product from their research using by the Deutsche Post. So it was really surprising, another way to do things, and we could, and also the industry had a really good impulse to see that not only big high-tech digital super innovation could put the market forward, but also really other type of thinking. And so I'm really happy to have now Marc Chevreau. He's CIO from XYT. I just know the name in French, so it's but yeah, I think you pronounce it like that. And he's president, fondateur, and chief from a new company, a manufacturer custom-made electric delivery vehicles, especially created for use in urban areas. So he's going to tell us a little bit more about his experiences as a smaller but highly innovative company in the automotive sector, and how you can be innovative also in Europe. Also, of course, we have another level playing field about innovation that we maybe have in the US or in China. So we are really happy to have you here in the panel. and maybe you give your impression how it was to be creative and innovative in France, and of course maybe you can give us an insight what drove you through all these states.
Yes, yes. Of course, in Europe, it's a little bit more complicated than in the US when you want to innovate. But in fact, I'm not really in line with Dr. Mario Heger about industry, especially speaking about different period in the electric car development. Because in fact, we had just before the 2000s, we had previously automotive industry was driven by innovations that were primarily the initiative of adventurers. And it was a time when we put forward engineers, designers, marketers. And in those times, a lot of small, electric car manufacturers company grow, but in fact, they never, they've been pioneers, but the gap to get the sufficient critical size was too high, and the growth too capital intensive. And so for the moment, none of those firms is still alive. And so we had been first, let's say, but it was too early, I think. And what I just wanted to point today, in fact, is quite a lack of innovation in the products sold by car manufacturer. Only the organization is considered. This development had been brought to due to several phenomena: industrial concentration, financialization, and quality management. In other words, the automotive industry has put in place 1,000 sheets of decision-making and production process, which aim to eliminate risk, but which has had a consequence to stifle creative freedom. I think it's also the fact today by the most credible, financially speaking, incoming ones. Nevertheless, many startups are raising a lot of money to produce electric cars today. The most known one is certainly Tesla, of course, but we can also speak about Revolt, Rivian, Faraday Future. But would have they set up anything lasting when the speculative bubble, I think, on which they stand will implode? Same like Tesla, some like Tesla will finally produce cars. We see, and quite great cars, but in fact, they are normally cars. Nothing really changed. They are competing with a normal car manufacturer. They are producing cars the same way. They are still heavy cars, even if they are electric ones. Of course, some are autonomous driving, but they are still normal cars and normally done. So what we wanted to try to change is the way of manufacturing cars, in fact. What to do and to focus on the use much more than anything else. So for that, for us, it was impossible really to imagine producing cars like they had been. And to match our ethical values that are close to our earth while ensuring significant profitability for society, we haven't retained anything from the practice currently in place in the automotive industry to imagine real disruptive solutions. Simplify the assembly and maintenance process to go to durability. Optimize, again, simplification of technological bricks to make them more sustainable, clean, longevity, recycling, knowledge optimization with over-processing, local and manual assembly in workshop. And this is also at ISO time versus, 4.0 industry. And so this allows maintenance, a low-skilled job that cannot be relocated, maintenance on production seats, pooling of skills and tools, on operation seats, simple procedures, simple process, reduction of dead stocks through the reduction of the number of component parts per vehicle, and the pooling of production maintenance stocks, cost reduction. Reduction of invests, of course, as I told you, it's much more complicated in Europe to lift money. So we don't need heavy equipment to build such kind of cars. All the parts are, I mean, the same from one car to the other. And so you can reuse, repair, and you can also use the versatility of such a model. Of course, the traction chain is compatible with any available energy source, battery, normal batteries, CNG, hydrogen, I mean petrol, not why not? Making hybridization so easy. Client involvement in the definition of the product specifications also for field experience, innovations. So for the customers, what does it bring really? The assurance of using the best tool on the market, efficiency and cost, the guarantee to always having it for a long time, repairability and robustness, the promise to be supported in the development of their profession and to maintain a strong competitive advantage, innovation and agility. The pride of participating in a more virtuous model while anticipating the future, social and environmental. For the public authorities, is to promote a virtuous solution in the social and environmental matters, strong national roots, visibility for the future, and I will say French steel innovation scalable worldwide. So for us, it's really what we want to push. It's quite complicated. We have to fight with the biggest, the strongest. But what is really interesting for the moment, you just have to glance of what Renault just pushed, a new brand called Mobilized. And this new brand is picking up all the stuffs we just are speaking about. And I think this is a part of the future.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marc. I think if we want to maybe make the evolution more European and to have a strength there, we have to look at such products. And I invite all the public to have a look. You have some great videos about your enterprise and how you are assembling the cars. And what is really interesting is also you are really simple in the assemblage and really make it long term and not depending from big companies. You are able to be connected in the future, of course, with all this autonomous driving we will probably see. And I wanted to ask you the last question, if you think it's really important that Europe provide some open sources systems, or what is about the data? Because if we are thinking about Tesla maybe creating a really data sharing, but you're not in, will be after difficult to be connected. So what is the role from in a kind of good infrastructure? Because I think that's the strength of Europe, is that we can provide good infrastructure. And so we should be able to have this infrastructure, to have this special model like you are sprouting out in Europe, and not having the part of the market just for the company from outside of Europe. So being local for local, like we had in the last panel. And the last thing is, because we are good also in regulation, Mario Herger made this joke before, I think we should have really good regulations, if that's our specialty in Europe. And for instance, the Euro charging file, and we have here somebody from the Commission. I think it's really important that when we are thinking about making a level playing field between all transport modes, we need, of course, CO2-based Euro charging in Europe. So we will promote innovation for new companies. That would be maybe an idea. And I just give you the word back with my first question.
Yeah, so just wanted to say something about regulation. We spoke a lot about weight. And I think this is a key for the European. And we are quite good at making cars. We just have seen that the smallest one disappear because there's no margin anymore on those cars. So the category A cars, the small ones, are not produced anymore in Europe. I mean, except one or two. Could be maybe the A go back produced by us, but otherwise the smallest disappear one after the other. So that's the first thing. So helping those small ones and maybe the lightest ones could be something around weight, because of course the lightest is the best, even for an electric car, even if a battery is quite heavy. So this is for the first thing. The second thing, I think we have to be, in fact, plug and play with the rest of the world, which means we can't do without, of course, development done all over the world. The Chinese are developing, the American ones too. We are developing, especially in the East countries. There are a lot of development around that, around autonomous solutions, around also, connectivity, generally speaking. So for us, little, small ones, we have to be plug and play with all those solutions. It's why it's quite complicated, but in fact, when it's in the philosophy, it's much easier, and it's much easier for us than for a great big car manufacturer, which have much more, know-how than we have. So, which want to keep those know-how. So I think we have no problem with that, to be open. It's I think, one of our basement.
Should I take over? Okay, well then we shift to the second panel now in the afternoon. Very impressed by what Mark has given his insights and shared his insights with us. And now I would like to invite also two other experts and guests for this afternoon session who have already listened to what was being said before and by the other experts. There is at one hand Maria Graziana Davino. She is the managing director, FCA and Fiat Chrysler in Germany. She has an Italian background and has a pretty, let's say, substantive overview of the automotive industry across Europe. And of course, second, it is Joseph Beretta. He is now the honorary president of Aver France, but he was a long-term, let's call it, president from this organization, Aver France. And if you don't mind, I would like to hand over first to Maria Grazia, who would like to share some slides with us. And then we give Joseph the floor for his introduction remark. And then we continue, because I've seen already very many questions to all three of you with the questions from the audience.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfect. We can hear you.
Good. I am lucky to and very glad to contribute to this discussion. That is very interesting. We are speaking about automotive industry, but actually this initiative allows us to become Europe. And this is the reason why I have been motivated to participate. So I have prepared some slides in order to allow the team to follow what I'm trying to say. Exactly, my name is Maria Grazia Davino. I am leading FCA Germany, that is now in the Stellantis group, just born Stellantis group. I have prepared this document with the gentle help of Mr. Markus Half, and we both are available for any kind of questions. I said a possible perspective because everything is being said about the automotive industry and transformation going on. But I have, let me say, I am trying to figure, okay. So I have structured my conversation trying to being able to be followed. So first of all, there are three mega trends that we have identified since years now. The corona pandemic is underlined and made obvious that individual transport still remains a substantial need as of today. And so the automobile will remain, as we see it from our, let me say, poor perspective as importers or as OEM, the main pillar of human mobility. The mega trends are related to the evolution of the products, but not only. So it's emissions, it's connectivity, and it's flexibility and ease of use. I will go through these three, but for me, what is important is the close-up of this discussion, at least of my proposal to the Green that invited me. So about emissions, it's the first step has been electrification. The fact of speaking about the environmental duty as of today is a must. So we don't have alternatives. This is the direction. So environmental friendly, to be environmental friendly is a must, okay? But as an OEM and as a player that is very operational in this business, I am feeling I call it the Cold War that we are living in this transformation. So if you think only about the costs and the penalties that the whole chain is facing, not only the OEM versus Brussels, but also the dealers. The colleague said that on these cars, there is no margin anymore. And for the customers, because the mobility is going to be much more expensive and will be in the future. So in my opinion, there is a strong need and the capability to activate a capability for a dialogue at all levels. Dear colleagues, we are upper class. It's not our problem. We all have our company car. We are all enjoying perspective on but we are not only entitled, but we are responsible for companies, for the development of our countries. I said I'm living in Germany. I grew up with the German culture, but I come from Southern Italy, and there is a reason why I said this. So still about emissions, there is a limited reach, inefficient batteries, there are high barriers. So we are in the middle of the transformation. I want to repeat that prices and cost of production, of sales, profits, and cost of mobility are still an issue. In general, diversified to various propulsion system is still an opportunity. I have been in, it was very interesting for me. I have been in Korea maybe 2 years ago, and there were manufacturers that have not invested at all in electrification, but in other technology. Anyway, I say we are discussing so much, as somebody said at the beginning, about this electrification and so on. Why blaming? This is all normal. This is called transformation, and this is no magic. It will not happen one day after another. And unluckily, transformation bring a lot of bloody consequences. And this is the reason why I call it Cold War, because Actually, on the newspapers and in our discussion, it looks like innovation and new companies and so on, but there are a lot of players in the whole chain that are suffering a lot. And I say diversity is the key to future. We have to be open and no monoculture. It has been demonstrated that the monoculture of propulsion system inevitably leads to immense diseases. I want to speak about challenges. We are manager, we are so used to challenges. We have to get used to disease. We have to get used to problems that are not our problems. We are, as said, upper class, but we are responsible for others. We are responsible for our blue collars. We are responsible as European for our people. Connectivity, I will be very quick on this because I am not here to teach anybody. The connectivity is an ongoing challenge, and we say there are two ways of connectivity. The first one is the demand of full integration of the mobile device into the car. So, but I have a different perspective on this. I call it a new social interaction with the good. So it's like a TV, it's like a PC. So the car becomes not only a mobility tool, but also a social interaction tool. So as I say here, it will be perceived by our customers as another mobile device, and we have to think about young customers. The challenge will be the car-to-car networks, and this is very much linked to the capability of activate the 5G networks. Anyway, don't we think that this transformation of the car industry is a part of the digital transformation that is happening since 30 years in our world? So, and very interesting the insights of the colleague coming from the States. There is so much diversity. So, and I mention here 2 points that, in my opinion, a part of the product will be main discussion for the European Parliament, for the European Commission: privacy and extensive collateral diseases of the digital transformation. Flexibility and ease of use, okay, that's also quite, let me say, it's quite normal. We say that this is still individual, but increasingly a car in the future will be shared, okay. The autonomous driving will increase the ability of sharing. So, and actually we can imagine a world where we call on demand the car and this is coming. Okay, well done. This is the vision. I am still fighting as an OEM and as an importer with the fact that we have to transform, we have to be in line with CO2, we have to have the dealers on board, dealers have still to make money, customers have to be happy, customers have to be able to have access to this mobility. In Italy, for example, sometimes the electrification is too expensive, and not speaking about infrastructure. So not even speaking about infrastructure. So all these, as I say, seems all very easy, no? Because we are speaking about seamless experience. We are visionaries and we are paid for having a part of our brain thinking about the future, but the other part of our brain is managing the reality. So all these changes have a big impact on the automotive business model. The colleague was saying, he's a small company and he's reacting. The other colleagues were saying there will be companies dying, there will be less companies. This one is committed, this other not. I must say, I live in this world and everyone is committed. Problem is that the fight is very tough. And I repeat myself, this is a Cold War, in my opinion, humble opinion. I can't teach anyone. I wanted to arrive to the conclusions because it's really my willingness to try to give a contribution. So I said, there is no black or white. We have to be propulsive, not to have a monoculture. Even as green, we have to be open to the fact that there is not only electrification, there are also good new technologies that are environmental friendly, but we don't have, it's very important not to sustain only monoculture because this leads to disease. Then it's useless to discuss continuing discussing about electrification because it's quite becoming a manipulation, my opinion, for useless politics. We have to think that all individual needs are relevant, and we have a social value chain that we have to consider. Direction is green because it's not the choice anymore. The automotive transformation, as I said, is part of a wider and much longer digital transformation of the society. I have been asked for a statement, and I wanted to repeat my statement here. I quoted Heraclitus, if nothing is destroyed and everything is transformed, transformation is constant. It's the truth, okay? Now, our capacity lies in the adaptation and in the ability to direct the transformation as much as possible. So we shall try together, and I think we can because I see a lot of competences. Operationally and pragmatically, we shall try to push the good and resist and reject the evil. This is it. So just my last words are, what is possible? We can make grouping of associations. We can make benchmark teams for big countries. Now we can make interfunctional workshop involving all the social chain. We can leverage on transformation to become Europe. So we have to use this transformation to become Europe. You can't imagine how different is Southern Europe from Hamburg, for example. And then this is an idea that came through your discussion. We could rule in collaboration among part manufacturers, so collaborations instead of competition, to be stronger in Europe. So this is to drive the change, to assist the change, and to support and ease the change in view of the future for which we are responsible. That's it from my side. Sorry.
Yeah, it was a bit longer than I expected, but thanks a lot. It was a great introductory remarks, and you made at the very last, you made this distinction between Southern and maybe you could lower the slides again, so we see the entire panel again. That would be great. You said the distinction of the southern part of Europe and the northern part. This is clearly so, and therefore I'm very happy that we have with the French honorary president of Aver France also somebody who knows actually both. While France is definitely not northern Europe, but it's also not completely southern Europe. And I would say with the Zoe, you were one of the best selling and one of the first ones on the market with a mass product. And you have a lot of, let's say, experience also when it comes to infrastructure. And also there were some questions already in the chat concerning the, let's say, resources, lithium, cobalt, and so on. So also, of course, especially in, let's say, the Green Party and the green environment, people are very much concerned about the damage which the the battery production might have. And maybe, of course, you could give us a little bit more of your experience, your insights, the market in France, and also what kind of, as Maria Grazia Davino has said, also the opportunities, the job creating opportunities of this disruptive process. So Joseph, you have the floor.
Yes, thank very much for the invitation. Perhaps I have a slow slide. I stay very quick to share with you to explain our vision of e-mobility. I think it's very important to have this kind of vision. So do you see my screen? Fine.
Yes.
When you speak of e-mobility, it is clear it's a mutation. And the first thing we have in mind is the technological mutation. But in fact, it's also a lot of mutation. It's industrial, of course, but environmental, energetical, societal, education, business model, because we have now, for example, the fuel is not petrol, is electricity, taxation, because the state have a lot of taxation of fuel. And all these things is necessary to change in the same time. And for me, e-mobility is not only vehicle or refilling infrastructure, is also interaction with grid and interaction with building. And that is very important to have this vision. And when you, like Maria said, when you put around the table all the actors of mobility, it's necessary to put also the actor of energy, of refueling, and building. That is very important if you want to win the battle of electromobility. One thing is sure today, it's on the way. And we don't know where you arrive in 10 years with e-mobility. And for that, it's necessary to have some conviction we have in the best way. And for that, there is a lot of study at the level of AVER. We have make an audit of this study. And one thing is sure, e-mobility is a solution for local pollution and for the life cycle analysis. But important, if the following condition is fulfilled, you use carbon electricity or hydrogen, free carbon electricity of hydrogen, you have an efficient recycling of battery, you use plugging in grid more as soon as possible in electric mode, you use smart charge to preserve the grid, and there is an other benefit if you also introduce second life of battery, vehicle to grid, vehicle to home, and to manufacture battery in Europe. So you see the way taken by Europe is good for me. To develop battery manufacturing in Europe is a good thing, but it's necessary also to address the other point, free carbon electricity and some education to use PHEV. So at the French level, it is sure we have put in charge all these dimensions. And for example, the AVER have worked on different strategy, and the strategy of car manufacturer with the French strategy contract, but also with the pluriannual plan of energy. And in this plan, we introduce electric vehicle, and also on the low carbon strategy, and we introduce electric vehicle on that, and the scenario of car manufacturer, it's revised to adapt to the new evolution. So in France, to support the market, it is clear we have some incentive for vehicle, but also for recharge solution, and don't forget that for education and information to the customer, because it is a good thing to put on the market electric vehicle and plug-in, but what is the real need of the consumer? He don't know very well this kind of vehicle, and we have convinced that it is important to have education and information of the consumer. And this is the actual position of the French market. we have, for example, in line to the sale of vehicle with the goal 2022 goal of car industry in France, but we have not in line to regard the public charging point, because we have only, you see, 30,000 public charging point, and the goal is at the end of this year to arrive at 100,000. It's a very difficult goal, and I think it's the important target, and all the actors in France focus on that. So we understand. My conclusion is it's clear. Don't just take in account battery cards. It is necessary to consider also the refueling station, interaction with grid and building. And if you go to discuss on the new regulation, it's necessary to put around the table all these kind of actors. So I finish my presentation. I think you have now a new, no.
Thank you, Joseph. Yes, that was really good. It was more like a holistic approach to, this is not absolutely right. It's not about a new engine. It's not about just an individual technology. It's more the concept behind it. And that's absolutely true. And that's why, for example, we Greens fight for its leads more installing wind and solar, so it's really green. It's a really long life circle. I think also Mark and Maria has mentioned that we need this recycling quotas, we need this circular economy targets, and then so on and so forth. So we cannot just limit it. And maybe there was a little bit misunderstanding at the beginning of our conference why we speak about the automotive industry. It doesn't mean we do not include everything which comes from different parts of the industry, which also comes from the energy supplier, which also comes from the from the consumer side, and so on and so forth. And so maybe I would like to bring in Mark once again, while I see that you said at the very beginning, maybe I was too early with my project, maybe I was too early in the market with, let's say, smaller and lighter vehicles. But what kind of, I mean, what would be from your side, political framework, incentives? What would you need from the European Commission side, either to bring up more startups, or as Mario has said before, to increase the venture capital, and also to help like smaller companies such as yours? Or would you be somebody who would like to merge with bigger companies such as Fiat or Chrysler? Or what could be a European strategy to go really in this more, let's say, decarbonization path, what we absolutely need urgently? And what kind of proposals would come from your side? And then Joseph again, but first Mark. First Mark, please.
First Mark, I think it's necessary to take in account two approaches. The first is to solve the barrier of the electromobility development. It is clear, energy, it's you are in this way to decarbonate electricity. This is the first. It's to continue it, to accelerate. And some states in Europe had a very bad electricity. So it's necessary to change that, because the car itself around Europe, and a car itself in Poland, for example, in Poland is not a free carbon car. So the second, it's also to preserve the employment in the country. And for that, you have different approach, because there is country where there is a car manufacturer, and other country where there is not a car manufacturer in the country. So the approach will be different, and it's necessary to make some aid for car manufacturer to change from thermal engine to e-mobility, and also to favorize that some networking, not networking, to create some exchange between car manufacturer and an energy provider, like not only electricity provider, but also the old like Total or all the energy provider who come to switch to electricity. I think it's important to make some guideline to go in this way. After that, the European level, I think you have in the good way when you push the battery manufacturer in Europe, that it's very important. So to finance really on battery, but also factory, and in the same time the recycling, taking on the recycling of the battery. I think is the first thing to do in the good way for develop electromobility. And the other thing is incentive, because when you analyze the market with the growth is very important. Is the market where the state have some incentive to balance the overcost of the electric vehicle. And the last point, it's infrastructure. Clearly, it's necessary to have a European plan to develop infrastructure in number, but also to guarantee interoperability of this kind of recharge, like you have, for example, for the phone, for the cell phone roaming, and a regulation for the cost of the roaming.
Standardization and infrastructure, this is absolutely important. It's crucial. It's a preconditioning for also attracting more consumers. So, Mark, what would be your proposal? And then we will have a smaller final round, and I pick up some more questions.
I'm going to try to be short. I'm going to try to be short. Yes, just for small, I mean, small innovative companies, I think we all need really structural funding. That's for sure. Because it's quite easy to borrow money, I mean, to build things, but it's much more complicated to have a really structural funding. Speaking about collaboration with car manufacturer, we are quite different. I mean, as I said, our way of approaching the product by itself and also manufacturing it is quite different. So, of course, we have reflection with them because they are really interested in what we are doing. As I told you, I mean, companies as Renault, for example, are trying to propose, and I mean, they are building a new brand, in fact, exactly saying what we are trying to make and what we started making. And so that's why we can't, I mean, stay, I think, for longer alone, that's for sure. But we really have great opportunities, I think. You spoke about, I mean, platforms, you spoke about open source things. And of course, it's also, I mean, a direction we have to have a glance at, because it's a part of a new business model also. And as we are producing platform or homologating them, but we are also able to produce them all over the world, because in fact, they are so simple to produce that, in fact, of course, in our basement, in our roots, we have such, I mean, feelings, I mean, such values that we have to share things.
Maria, your picture is frozen. Can you hear us? Yes. Okay. No. You're there. Okay. Great. How would you see this European approach? We have a couple of questions here. They go more in another direction. Well, there's the Swedish. There was that. Mario Herger is actually very well doing and answering all the questions coming in. Thanks for this. Well, then maybe I ask you to react on what Joseph and Mark has comment also from the perspective of somebody who works or has worked for the bigger automotive companies. What would be the optimal? I mean, you were talking about the dialogue, the communication, and so on. But in terms of more hardware, Is it the infrastructure? What kind of support would you ask the European Union? Is it the high intensive energy battery production as a pre-product for your company, or what are the things where Fiat would struggle most, or Chrysler would struggle most in terms of transition?
I'm not in the position to ask you something about the product, but I am very much in agreement with Joseph Beretta and with Marc Chevreau about two things. Joseph Beretta concluded that we need to sit all around the table. So therefore, we really need to have workshop with Brussels. I think that there is a gap of information between you leaders and the real things that are going in the market. And I think that if we make workshops that have the substance of involving people that know and that leave the market, we will come out with the really requests that are easy, that not expensive, that are just agreements, and we can be quick in advancing. And on the other hand, what Marc Chevreau said, to allow investments and to support, the banks have an important role at the moment, in my opinion, and you have to make there a tough call, because in a transformation time like this, banks don't have to just look at the risk profile, they have to support with the money at low cost, this overall in Europe. I also strongly believe that you have to look into the differences, and you are responsible with us, in smoothing these differences among Europe. Unless we will never become Europe. We call us Europe, but we will never become Europe if there are so many differences.
Yeah, also in your presentation, you were using really harsh words such as Cold War, and that not just once, but you were pretty clear in this rhetoric, which I think, well, there is a need to talk more, for sure.
Oh, sorry for that, but I wanted to give the sense of urgency, because all the players of my chain, and I don't know if Marc or Joseph can feel this as well, there is pain. There is pain in the OEM. We are under pressure. There is pain in the suppliers. There is pain in the customers. By the way, I very much agree on the fact that we have to educate the customers, but we have also to educate new salespersons. So we have to make a transition. And there are a lot of opportunity if we talk. And if we look the reality into the eye. Why I say Cold War? Because nobody speaks about this. The bloody part of the business is not discussed. It is discussed the bright part of the business, the innovation, the vision, the 2030. But now we are in 2021 and we are bleeding. Sorry
Joseph.
for that.
No. That's as I said, told you before. It's not for appeasing us or pleasing us. So, Joseph, your final word before I hand over to my colleague Henrike for the conclusion.
Yes, my final word. It's I think it's you are in the specific period today, and it's an opportunity to continue the change. Is not to stop the change because the economy it's very difficult today, sure, but I think we have decided to change. Some regulation oblige the car manufacturer to change. It's necessary to continue the effort, because if you want to reach the objective of decarbonation in 2050, it's necessary to continue the effort and focus effort today on infrastructure. Thanks.
Okay, so that was a good insight. I don't know, Mark, you would like to have a final word before we hand over to the conclusion for this panel?
Yes, maybe just a small word, just to say, let's have a glance at all the technologies. And especially we have good also know-how around thermal engines, and we should also keep that, because this will be, I think, once again useful. We still have to think there are coming green new technology with new kind of engine. We still have to keep that. We have that strength, this know-how. So be careful, just keep some guys working on that. I'm sure this will be useful for future too. Not only all focus on electricity.
Okay. I actually liked the beginning of Mario Herger's presentation in the first panel as well, when he said that the US is inventing, the Chinese are copying, and we are regulating. And I wish we could be a little bit more, let's say, all of that, while we, of course, have to invent more. And as many of you have stressed also, that we need adventure capital, so we have to risk more, and of course we have to copy, and also, as Mark said, we have to preserve the good ones. So this would be something where we could maybe have a following up session, not today, but at another time, and hopefully there will be times where we can visit industrial places, where we can go to places, where we can meet in real. I very much look forward to this post-corona times, whenever this might be. And I'm very glad and we are very honored to have you all today here in the virtual room. It was very enlightening for sure. And hopefully it was also some new things, but a possibility for a fruitful exchange. So far from my side, thank you very much. And I will hand over for the final conclusion for this part to my colleague, Henrike Hahn.
Yeah, thank you very much. We come to an end of our panel on the transition of the automotive industry. Thanks, dear Viola and dear panelists. So the most important conclusion of this panel certainly is, let's continue to talk, right? With a follow-up online or on site, because it's a really very interesting, challenging topic right in the middle of where we want to go in the future. And we can definitely see that the necessary decarbonization path we need to follow to reach our Paris climate goals is not only a restriction, but also a chance. I think this is a conclusion also from this webinar. During a transformation process, the automotive sector is confronted already to make the automotive industry resilient, competitive, and sustainable. And we all know, let's just repeat it, green economy is possible, green industry policy is possible, and yes, carbon neutral road transport is possible as well. And I think it's clear we have in Europe the chance to become the leader for an ecological modernization using intelligent technologies to build the most modern cars in the world. And we Greens, we want to set the right political framework and the right incentives that this can happen. And for that, we should all work together. We will work together, science, businesses, civil society, to find the best solutions for our future. And this is what we did today. So thanks for being with us. Thanks, my dear colleagues, dear panelists, dear participants in your office or at home. Thank you very much for your questions and the discussion we all had all together today. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again or to read from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. It has been a pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Viola. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Henrike. And thank you to everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Ciao.
Keep in touch.
Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye.